Welcome to the quiet verdict, where every story ends with justice. The last thing my mother said to me before hanging up was, "Don't ever call this house again." Then she blocked my number. My father removed me from the family trust 2 weeks later, and my sister, she didn't say a word for 5 years, all because of a lie she told over dinner. A lie so convincing, my parents believed it without asking me a single question. They thought I had dropped out of medical school, that I had stolen money, that I had embarrassed the family name. None of it was true, but truth doesn't matter much in families that already decided who you are. My name is Dr. Elisa Moreno, and this is the story of how my sister destroyed my life for 5 years, until the night she was rushed into the emergency room and I walked in wearing the white coat she said I'd never earned. But before that moment, the truth had been waiting in silence, ready to change everything in a way none of them ever saw coming. I was not the favorite. That title belonged to my older sister, Camille Moreno, Harvard undergrad, perfect GPA, perfect posture, perfect smile at every family fundraiser. My parents built their entire identity around her success. My father used to introduce her as my future legacy. When I got into medical school at NYU, my mother said, "That's wonderful, sweetheart." When Camille got into Columbia Law, they hosted a 200-person celebration. You learn your position early in families like that. Camille shined. I adjusted. But here's what nobody understood about me. I was never trying to compete. I just wanted to be enough. Medical school was hard, not because I wasn't capable, because I was exhausted, juggling tuition, working part-time, living on loans, trying to survive without the financial safety Camille always had. Then came the dinner that changed everything. It was my father's 60th birthday, 70 guests, private dining room, wine, speeches, legacy talk. Halfway through dessert, Camille tapped her glass. "I have something important to share." She smiled at me across the table. It wasn't warm, it was strategic. "Dad," she said gently. "I didn't want to say anything, but I think you deserve to know." Then she told them I had dropped out of medical school, that I'd been placed on academic probation, that I'd taken money from our parents to cover it up. Every word was delivered calmly, carefully, believably. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. My father turned toward me slowly. "Is that true?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because the shock was so complete, my brain hadn't caught up to my body yet. "It's not," I finally said. But in families like mine, denial sounds like guilt. My mother's face hardened immediately. "We paid your rent last year." "That was a loan," I whispered. Camille looked wounded. "I didn't want to expose you. Expose me, like I was the scandal." By the end of the night, my parents had decided who to believe. It wasn't me. Within a week, my tuition assistance was cut. My emergency credit card was cancelled. My father's trust attorney called. "You've been temporarily removed as a beneficiary, temporarily turned into permanently 2 months later." My mother blocked me. My father sent one final message. "We can't support dishonesty." Camille sent nothing. For 5 years I lived without them. Finished medical school, worked double shifts. Slept in hospital call rooms when I couldn't afford rent. Graduated top 10%, completed residency. Became Dr. Elisa Moreno. And not once during those 5 years did my parents attend my white coat ceremony, my graduation, my residency completion, my first hospital appointment, because according to them, I was the dropout, the embarrassment, the liar. I stopped trying to correct the story, because eventually, you realize truth doesn't matter to people who need you to be the villain. 5 years later, at 2:17 a.m., my hospital pager went off. Emergency trauma admission female. 32, severe internal bleeding. I walked into ER Bay 3. And saw Camille, unconscious, pale, hooked to monitors. My mother was crying in the corner. My father looked 10 years older. They didn't recognize me at first, until I stepped closer, and my mother gasped. "Elisa?" She looked at the badge on my chest. "Dr. Moreno." Her hand shook. You're working here?" "I never left medical school," I said calmly. Silence spread through the room. My father couldn't meet my eyes. Camille had ruptured an ectopic pregnancy. She needed surgery immediately. And I was the attending physician, on-call pill, who need you to be the villain. I didn't hesitate, because ethics aren't conditional. I performed the surgeries, saved her life, stayed until she was stable. When Camille woke up, she looked at me like she had seen a ghost. "You're a doctor?" "Yes." Her eyes filled with something complicated. Guilt, fear, recognition. My father pulled me into the hallway later. "We thought you." "I know what you thought," I interrupted gently. "Did you ever verify it?" He didn't answer, because he couldn't. 3 days later, Camille asked to speak to me alone. "I was jealous," she said quietly. "You were catching up. Dad was proud of you." "I couldn't stand it." "So you destroyed me?" I asked. Her silence was answer enough. My parents had cut me off over a lie and never once asked for proof. That realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. I didn't scream, I didn't humiliate them, I didn't demand apologies. I simply said I deserved a phone call. My mother cried. My father finally said we were wrong. 5 words. 5 years too late. They asked if I would come home for dinner again. I told them no, not yet, because forgiveness isn't automatic. It's earned. Camille tried to rebuild, slowly, awkwardly. My relationship with her will never be what it was, but it might become something honest. My parents updated the trust again. They asked if I wanted my place restored. I told them something they didn't expect. I don't need it anymore because I built my own life without them, without their approval, without their money. And that mattered more than inheritance ever could. There's something strange about silence after chaos. After the hospital discharge papers were signed, after Camille was wheeled out, after my mother hugged me in a way she hadn't in 5 years, I went back to my apartment alone. No applause. No dramatic music, no courtroom victory, just quiet, and that quiet felt heavier than the betrayal ever did. For 5 years, I had told myself I didn't need them, that I was stronger without them. That being cut off had made me independent, and all of that was true, but it didn't erase what it cost. There were nights in medical school when I slept in the library because I couldn't afford heat. There were months I lived on instant noodles and black coffee. There were birthdays no one remembered. Graduation photos where every other student stood beside proud parents, and I stood alone. And every single time I struggled, I wondered if they were right about me, if maybe I had done something wrong, if maybe I wasn't as capable as I thought, if maybe I really was the disappointment they believed. That's what betrayal does. It plants doubt, not just about the event, but about yourself. And doubt grows quietly. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It says, maybe you deserved it. It took me years to understand something important. The pain wasn't just about being cut off. It was about not being believed, not being asked, not being trusted, not being given the dignity of a conversation. They chose the easier narrative, the one that protected the golden child, the one that preserved the illusion of family perfection. And I became collateral damage. Families don't always choose truth. They choose comfort, and truth is rarely comfortable. When my father said we were wrong, I believed him. But belief doesn't rewind time. It doesn't give back the white coat ceremony they missed. It doesn't give back the first apartment I cried in alone. It doesn't give back 5 years of holidays where my phone never rang. Forgiveness is not the same thing as restoration. I can forgive them. That doesn't mean I return to the version of myself that begged for their approval. Because here's what changed inside me. I stopped needing to be chosen. When I saved Camille's life, it wasn't revenge, it wasn't karma, it wasn't poetic justice, it was duty, because I am a doctor, and doctors don't decide who deserves care. But when I walked out of that operating room, and my mother saw Dr. Moreno stitched across my coat, I saw something shift in her eyes. Not pride, not yet, understanding. The realization that I had become something powerful without their help, that I had built something real, without inheritance, without funding, without applause, and that scared them. Because power without dependency changes the balance of every relationship. My sister told me she was jealous, that she felt replaced, that she couldn't handle the idea of sharing attention. I listened, but jealousy is not an excuse for cruelty. It's an explanation. Explanations don't erase damage. We are rebuilding slowly, carefully. Like strangers learning to trust for the first time. Some days it works, some days it doesn't. That's what healing actually looks like. It's uneven, it's awkward, it's not cinematic. My father asked if I would come back into the family business. I told him no, not because I wasn't capable, because I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I built my own legacy. One patient at a time, one surgery at a time, one night shift at a time. And that legacy belongs to me, not to the Moreno name, not to the family trust, not to the sister who tried to erase me, mine. If you've ever been the overlooked one, if you've ever been misjudged because someone else controlled the narrative, if you've ever watched people believe the louder voice instead of the honest one, I need you to hear this. Your silence does not equal guilt. Their belief does not equal truth. And being cut off does not mean you were wrong. Sometimes it simply means you threatened a story that someone else was too invested in maintaining. The truth is, I didn't win. There was no trophy, no final speech. There was just survival. And survival is enough, because 5 years ago I was the dropout, the liar, the embarrassment. Today, I'm the citizen they call at 2 a.m., and that title, I earned it, without them. And that's the kind of justice no one can take away. Now, before this ends, I want to ask you something quietly. Have you ever been the one they underestimated? The one they dismissed? The one they decided about without ever asking? If this story felt personal to you, type the word enough in the comments, just that one word. Because sometimes we need to see how many of us have survived something similar. And if stories like this remind you of your own strength, subscribe. Not because of me, but because there are more stories coming. Stories about quiet people who stopped shrinking. Stories about betrayal that didn't break someone. Stories about justice that didn't require cruelty. This was the quiet verdict. Take care of yourself. And never let someone else decide who you are.